and welcome to today's webinar, a guided tour of AAII Stock Investor Pro fundamental stock screening software led by Wayne Thorp. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. We are happy to have you all here. My name is Jenna Brashear, and I'll be your host for today. I want to remind all of our viewers that AAII is a nonprofit educational group and is not a financial advisor, and thus is not able to give personal advice. Every investor is different. That's why our goal with each broadcast and article is to educate you on how to make better financial decisions. A handout of the presentation is available under the handout section of your GoToWebinar control panel, located on the right-hand side of the screen. And if you have any questions for our speaker, please submit them using the question section of your GoToWebinar control panel. And any outstanding questions not addressed after the presentation can be emailed to members@aaii.com. And if you experience any issues with the audio or video of the webinar, please consult the instructions on how to change your device's settings or consult the GoToWebinar website for support at gotowebinar.com. And a friendly reminder that this presentation is recorded and a replay of the webinar will be available tomorrow on AAII's YouTube channel, along with links to these presentations handouts, as well as any resources we discuss. And for our new viewers, we'd like to give a little background about our organization. The American Association of Individual Investors is an independent nonprofit corporation formed in 1978 for the purpose of assisting individuals in becoming effective managers of their own assets through programs of education, information, and research. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy the presentation. The floor is yours, Wayne.
Thank you, Jenna, and welcome everyone. Glad everyone could attend this afternoon. My name is Wayne Thorp. I'm the head of research analysis products at AAII. I'm also the program manager for Stock Investor Pro. And actually just realized I've been using the software now for almost 25 years, literally from day one at the association. So hopefully I can provide some unique insights to help you better understand Stock Investor Pro. So today's presentation is on AAII Stock Investor Pro software. It's intended as an introduction, so it's primarily for new users or potential subscribers. And for the next hour or so, I'm going to walk you through some of the basic navigational tips for using the program and touching on some of the features that I think really set Stock Investor Pro apart from other screening programs and services that are out there, as well as those that I think add some powerful functionality to the program. Lastly, I'll conclude with some useful subscriber resources that will help you unlock the power of the program. As I alluded to earlier, this presentation is more of a beginner session. So if you have been using the program for a while, thank you. But you probably will find that a lot of what I'll be talking about probably will be things you already know, but perhaps I will be highlighting some useful tidbits that you aren't aware of. So we discovered that for whatever reason, I'm not able to access or view the questions that'll be coming in. So we're going to have to push questions off to the end. Jenna is able to see the questions, and so she'll be feeding me those questions at the end. So unfortunately, I won't be able to answer questions as we go along. But again, we'll definitely reserve time at the end to answer any questions you may have. If you drop off or if you think of a question after the conclusion of this webinar, feel free to send those questions to me directly at Wayne, W-A-Y-N-E, at AAII.com. So with that, let's get started. Stock Investor Pro is a robust, full-featured fundamental stock screening and research database program developed by AAII. It's a Windows-based program that runs on Windows 10 or 11. But for Mac users, you can run Windows using an emulation software or in a virtual environment. Stock Investor Pro is not an app, so it won't run on mobile devices. However, one of the initiatives that I'm working on is to create an online version of Stock Investor Pro that's not operating system specific and that can run via a web browser. So that's one of the projects that we're working on that'll hopefully be taking shape over the next several quarters. Stock Investor Pro tracks a database of roughly 7,000 actively traded companies that do trade on US exchanges. So the New York American Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, and the NYSE. It also tracks ADRs as well as OTC and bulletin board stocks. Stock Investor Pro comes with over 60 predefined stock screens. Those of you that are familiar with the stock idea screens that we offer on our website, all of those, well, not all, the vast majority of those screens are pre-built into Stock Investor Pro. But for do-it-yourselfers, Stock Investor Pro also allows you to build your own stock screens. There are roughly 2,000 data points per company, including monthly historical prices, annual and quarterly financial statement data, financial ratios, multiples, and earnings estimate data coming from Refinitiv and IBES. The program also offers detailed sector and industry data, and you can update the data daily over the internet with data updates available early in the mornings, Tuesdays through Saturdays, assuming that the market was open the previous days. Overall, Stock Investor Pro is an excellent analytical and educational tool that not only helps you analyze individual stocks, but helps you develop and follow a disciplined investment strategy. With Stock Investor Pro, you can focus your analysis on stocks that meet your specific financial requirements because everyone is different. The types of stocks that I might look for would be very different from stocks that perhaps Jenna would look for, or that many of you others would look for as well. So not only does it allow you to use the predefined screens that follow the investment strategies of some of Wall Street's most successful investors, as well as those that are built around factors that historically have been shown to generate market-beating results. But you can also create your own screens, as well as develop your own data points that you can use for screening. While Stock Investor Pro gets a lot of attention for the fact that it's a fundamental screening program, it's also important to point out that it's a robust stock research database with some of the deepest collections of fundamental ratios, multiples, and detailed financial statement data that you're going to find anywhere. Over the years, I've discovered that the amount of financial data that you can find on companies online, outside of going to the SEC, has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller. And the data that is available online might only cover maybe a quarter or two, or maybe a year or two. But with Stock Investor Pro, you get several years of detailed financial statement data, as well as financial ratios, multiples, etc. And it also allows you to do comparisons using sector and industry median data, as well as look at companies and analyst estimate data, and as well as generate a variety of different reports. With Stock Investor Pro, you can organize the analysis process to make it more efficient as well as less time consuming, because we all know, time is really the most valuable resource and limited resource at our disposal. With Stock Investor Pro, you can display and analyze screening results using both the predefined or customized collections of data points that are most important to you. You can print single-page company reports, as well as multi-page comprehensive reports, or custom data reports. You can also take all of the data that's in Stock Investor Pro and export it basically through a very simple copy-paste function that you can drop that data into an Excel spreadsheet for additional mathematical manipulation. Really, overall, again, I've been using Stock Investor Pro for 25 years, and I've been following quantitative stock screening for nearly a quarter of a century. And my experience has shown me that following a defined stock screening methodology adds an element of discipline to your investment approach that increase your chances for investment success. But as a product of AAII, Stock Investor Pro also builds on our mission of investor education. Not only do you have the raw data as well as the screening functionality that Stock Investor Pro provides, but AAII also offers a wealth of articles both within the program as well as the Stock Investor website, discussing the investment strategies of some of the most successful investors as well as investment strategies of all times. These articles can help you determine what screening parameters are most successful over time and will help you develop your own profitable stock screens. But now I'm going to stop my slideshow, cross my fingers, and move to the program for a live demo of Stock Investor Pro. And there's always an element of risk here, making sure that the internet connection stays or anything like that. So it can take just a minute for me to shut down and launch Stock Investor Pro. So here we go. Okay, so with any luck at all, you can now see Stock Investor Pro. If Jenna, for some reason, if you can't see Stock Investor Pro, if you could jump in and let me know, but I believe that we are displaying that now. So here is Stock Investor Pro in all its glory. And when you first open Stock Investor Pro, you're confronted with Stock Notebook number 1 Untitled. And here you can perform and see a tremendous amount of data. And one thing I do want to point out, especially if you're new to Stock Investor Pro, is Stock Investor Pro arguably is probably one of the most robust pieces of software you've probably run across. And like any detailed, robust tool, there is a learning curve involved. So it's important, when you get and start using the program, is to not to get overwhelmed. Over the years that I've been associated with Stock Investor Pro, especially since I've taken over as program manager, is I've worked hard to develop a collection of user resources that you can access both within the program as well as online, which I'll show you a little bit later, to help you learn how to use the program. And like with any tool, using the program repetitively, reviewing the how-to guides, etc., will really give you the insights to help you unlock the full potential and the full power of Stock Investor Pro. But when you first open the program, here you have Stock Investor Notebook number 1. And there's a few things worth noting here. Is initially you can see here at the bottom left is how many companies are in the database. So with data through Friday's close, there's slightly over 7,000 companies that are in Stock Investor Pro. When you first open it, then you have all of the companies in the database in your notebook. But you'll see here that the very first company, 1-800-Flowers.com, is highlighted in yellow. The company that's highlighted in yellow is the quote unquote active company. And what that means then is you can see all of these different data tabs across the top of the program. Whatever company is highlighted in yellow, when you start clicking on these different sub-tabs, it's that specific company's data that you're looking at. So again, 1-800-Flowers.com was the highlighted company. So when we go to the multiples tab, we can see here then that all of the data we see on these individual tabs relate to 1-800-Flowers. So if you want to then, if you want to look for an individual company, we have a very easy, accessible ticker search here at the top. So let's say, for example, let's do a personal favorite of mine, Tractor Supply. So if you put in the ticker TSCO and enter that in, so now that becomes the active company. So you can look for companies individually using this ticker search. And again, then when you start looking at these individual tabs, it's that specific company that you've done a ticker search for. It's that data that you'll be seeing on those individual tabs. Now, when you first open Stock Investor Pro, again, looking here at the bottom left of the screen, you can see that beyond the 7,023 companies that are in the active notebook, you can also see that they're ranked by company name and ascending order. So that means they're ranked alphabetically from A to Z. Now, that is the default ranking. But if you want to, any of the data fields that show up here in the stock notebook, you can rank based on these data fields. Not even those that are that show up here in the notebook. But if you will go to Tools and Rank, you can select any of the 2,000 plus data points that are in the stock investor to rank. So let's say, for example, I want to rank the database by market cap. So market capitalization, a proxy for company size. So if I go to price and share statistics, which is the data category that market cap lives in, scroll down to market cap, and now I want to rank this in descending order, which means then the companies with the largest market caps will rank at the top. I want descending order, and then I'll click OK, and boom. We can now see again at the bottom left that the 7,023 companies that are in the active notebook are now ranked in descending order by market capitalization. So we can see that as of Friday's close, Apple Inc. is the largest company trading on US exchanges at this point in time. So you have it now ranked in this order. But as you look and as you scroll around within the stock notebook and you see all of these different data points, you can also rank the database from here. So let's say, for example, we'll come back down. And so we see here, one of the data points is PE, the price earnings ratio. If I go to the PE column header and right click on it, you have the option of ranking the database by PE in either ascending or descending order. So I'm going to rank it in ascending order. So the companies that have the smallest price earnings ratio will move to the top. And so coming back to PE, now because the way the ranking goes, so any companies that have negative earnings will rise to the top. So we would have to scroll down until we find companies that have a non-null PE, which sadly, a lot of companies these days that don't generate positive earnings on a trailing basis. But we can see here that we have Sector 10 Inc. has the smallest PE in the database at 0.1. So these are two ways in which you can rank the database of Stock Investor Pro. Now, when you open Stock Investor Pro, by default, you're confronted with the standard data view. And this, I believe at my last count, if it's correct, there's roughly 250 or so different data points in this standard view. So we've narrowed down the 2,200 plus data points in the database down to roughly 10%, but still 250 data points. It's a lot of data to digest and be confronted with. But with Stock Investor Pro, you have over 20 predefined data views, as well as the ability to create your own. Now, a question may be, what is a data view? A data view, very simply, is a collection of data points that you can then display within the stock notebook, generate reports, which I'll show you a little bit later, etc. But let's say, for example, I'm a big fan of the John Neff screen. So there are specific data points that are associated with the Neff approach. There's the dividend adjusted PEG, sales and earnings growth, free cash flow, etc. Well, I've created a view and called it the Neff view. And it's predefined. It's one that it's one that I created. So it's a custom view, but I can select it from this. And so now the data points that are in my Neff view are the data points that show up. So these, I think there's probably maybe about 15 or 20 data points. But again, these are data points that are specific to a strategy that I'm interested in. So you can create a data view that, if you're only interested in, a very select number of data points, you can create your own view using the view editor. And so since I already have the Neff view loaded, when I pull up the view editor, the Neff view is already loaded. So they're 23 data points, and you can reorder them if you wanted to, and you can create your own, and you can save them. So then you can pull up these data views to display only those data points that interest you within the stock notebook. But again, just like I did previously, I can then rank using these particular fields. So return on equity is one of the fields in my Neff view. So if I want to rank the database by return on equity in descending order, now all the companies that have the highest return on equity over the trailing 12 months, those are the ones that rise to the top. Another useful feature, and one that we added several years ago, but one that I was really pushed for and I'm glad when we added it, is, as I said earlier, I'm very interested in the NEF screen. The NEF screen is pre-built into Stock Investor Pro, so it's one that I run very often. But if you're creating a screen, which I'll walk you through the steps to create a screen a little bit later, but if you're working within the screen editor and you created your own screen, and actually I'll bring up the predefined NEF screen here. So this is the NEF screen that's built into Stock Investor Pro, and these are the data fields and the filters that are specific to that. Let's say you're either working with a predefined screen or if you create your own screen. Inevitably, probably, if you create a screen with a specific set of data fields, chances are then you'd be interested in seeing what those individual data points and values are for the companies that actually pass your screen. And just out of curiosity, we can see that as of Friday's close, 8 companies currently pass the NEF screen. Well, if I hadn't already created my own NEF view, but I wanted to just very quickly look at the data fields that are specific to the NEF screen, within the screen editor, I can go to the Make View field, which what that does, actually, let's go back to the standard view. Let's close this so it's fresh. So again, we come to the Make View, and what that does then is we have the filters and the data fields that make up the NEF screen. All of the individual data points that are used in whatever screen you're looking for, again, in this case, the John Neff screen, it populates a view with all of those data fields. So with a click of a button, it transfers all of the data fields that are used in whatever screen you might be looking at, again, either predefined or a screen that you created yourself, and populates your own view that you can then save. We'll call it new NEF. So we've been saved. I can close it, and then I can go back to the view dropdown, and there's my new NEF view, and you have those data fields. So it used to be, before we add this feature, you have to go into the field, the view editor, and hand pick each of the particular data fields that you might be interested in, especially if you just wanted those that are in a particular screen. But now with this Make View, you can create a view literally on the fly. I think a very important and useful time-saving option as well. So I alluded to earlier that another way in which you can use data views is, let's say I've run my NEF screen and I have my new NEF view. And so inevitably you're going to get the question, okay, I want to be able to print the companies that pass my screen and with those data fields that are in the view that I'm most interested in. How do I do that? Well, you can do that using a view report. So if you click on the print icon at the top right of the toolbar of Stock Investor Pro, that brings up the available reports option. And in this case, I want to do a view report for all of the companies in the active notebook. And one thing I didn't touch on earlier is the active notebook, when you first open the program, is all of the stocks that are in the active database. So again, the 7,000 plus. But if you run a screen, in this case, we've run the John Neff screen. Now we've gone from the 7,000 plus companies that are in the active notebook to only 8. So the active notebook is either the entire universe of stocks, the results of a stock screen, or if you've loaded a portfolio, then the tickers that are in a portfolio are the companies that make up the active notebook. So in this case, I want to do a view report for all companies in the active notebook. And so I can see here that there are 8 companies that are active. And I'm just going to do a preview. And so then we can go and select our view. So I have a lot of views that I've created my own. The predefined views in Stock Investor Pro, as well as predefined screens, are always preceded with an asterisk. So these are views that are predefined and preloaded into the program, just like you can see the John Neff screen has the asterisk Neff John. That indicates that it's a predefined screen in Stock Investor Pro. But I'm going to come up to my new Neff view that I created. And you can either view your report with the across basically the columns as you move left to right, either are the data fields or the issue. I like to view my data from top to bottom, so I do across by issue, and we can click OK. So now we have my printout with the 8 companies that pass my Neff screen with the data points that are in my new Neff. So we have the companies across the top with the data fields in my view moving your way down. So these are one of the reports that come with Stock Investor Pro. And a little bit later, I'll walk you through some of the other reports that are also available with the program. So lastly, another way in which you can use a data view is, let's say you want to do some custom calculations of this data, or if you just prefer to, perhaps view data within a spreadsheet as well as print data within the spreadsheet. Well, it's very easy. Is whatever universe of companies with whatever data points that are part of whatever view you have loaded, you can right-click on the stock notebook, and one of your options is to copy notebook to clipboard. So very quickly behind the scenes, but now I'm going to open up Excel, and hopefully you can see Excel. And if you just do Control V to paste, you now have the 8 companies that passed the Neff screen with the data fields that make up my new Neff view. And you can then go through, if you want to, you can select this and print it. Or if you want to, do some aggregate calculations, if you want to manipulate this data, anything you want to do with Excel, but with basically just right click and copy notebook, you can then paste that data into Excel for further manipulation. And I don't want to save that, so come back to the program. So now I'm going to talk about some of the additional reports that are available in Stock Investor Pro. And to do that, now we come back to the print icon, and this brings us back to the available reports option. One of the reports that are available in Stock Investor Pro is a company summary. So let's say, for example, I want to print, well, you have 2 options. You can print a company summary for the selected company. Again, that's the company that's highlighted in yellow. So it shows you here that if I wanted to do it would be on Regeneron Pharmaceuticals, or you can print a company summary for all the companies in the active notebook. Strongly discourage you from doing this if you have all 7,000 companies loaded. But in this case, if I wanted to print a 1-page company summary report for the 8 companies, this would be a relatively quick function. But I'm going to select FedEx now as the highlighted company. And because that was already open. So now FedEx is the selected company, and I want to do a company summary on the selected company. So here is the company summary report in Stock Investor Pro. Just a simple 1-page report, gives you some very basic summary data. Here at the top left of it, you get a monthly price chart, a description of the company. You get price performance, growth rates, earnings surprise data, raw earnings estimates data, as well as we're moving on the left side from top to bottom, We then have quarterly EPS and quarterly sales figures. And then on the right side, you get annual financial statement data for the past 5 years, as well as a select group of multiples and ratios, both trailing 12-month as well as on an annual basis, based on the fiscal periods. So this is, again, very basic snapshots, company summary report that's available in Stock Investor Pro. Another report that you have access to is a comprehensive company report. Now, this is a much more detailed report, and it's actually one that you can cater to your own needs. So I'm going to, in this case, do a comprehensive company report, again, for FedEx, since that's the company that's selected. But if you wanted to, you could also print comprehensive company reports for all the companies that are in the active notebook. But I'm going to do preview again. But when you're dealing with the comprehensive company report, you can specify the elements that are in the report that that the program's going to generate for you. So I'm going to do just share statistics, multiples, growth rates, estimates, and ratios. I also like to view my financial data more on a percentage change. So for quarterly, that's same quarter, annually, but same quarter percentage change. And then I'm also going to do the same on an annual basis for the financials, looking at percentage change. So you select the elements that you want to go into your comprehensive company report, and you click OK. And so now this report, even though I didn't select quite everything, is an 8-page report. So these, more paper. So again, caution you if you want to print this on a large number of companies. But you can see here now all of the elements that I specified. So I selected quarterly earnings data, ratios and multiples, growth rates. So you've got 1, 3, 5, and 7-year and trailing 12-month growth rates for a number of income statement and cash flow items. You have ratios, so profitability, operating ratios, liquidity ratios, debt management, asset management. And then we have our quarterly and annual financial data, but again, I'm looking at percentage change. So what this does is, if I'm looking for the fiscal period ending November 30th of 2021 for FedEx, that means that sales grew from the quarter ending 11/31/2021 compared to the same period a year ago. Sales increased 14.2%. So looking at the same quarter year over year removes the seasonality that inevitably exists in a lot of different companies. But I find this to be a very useful way to look at companies instead of just looking at the raw data. And then lastly, we have annual percentage change numbers, again, for the income statement, cash flow, and balance sheet items as well. So we can see that for the fiscal year ending 5/31/2021, sales for FedEx grew 21.3% compared to the same compared to the annual fiscal period the year before. So this is the comprehensive company report in Stock Investor Pro. You can also create what are called statistical summary reports. And what these are basically is that it's a report that crunches the numbers either of the entire universe of stocks or the companies that it might be in a portfolio or the companies that have passed a particular screen. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a statistical summary. Actually, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to run a different. Let's say you're interested in knowing, for example, summary statistics for the companies that make up the S&P 500. So the first thing you can do is, using the screen editor in Stock Investor Pro, I'm going to create a screen that looks for the current constituents of the S&P 500. So we're looking for Standard & Poor's stock equals 500. So as of Friday's close, actually, there are 501 companies that are currently making up the S&P 500. Pardon me. So I've applied this, so we can see now here at the bottom left of the window that 501 companies are selected. So we have 501 companies that are in the active universe. And I'm going to create a statistical summary for the companies in the active notebook, which are the 501 companies that passed my S&P 500 screen. Going to, again, do a preview. And again, you're able to specify the collection of data points that you are going to use to generate this report. So again, you're going to select a view. So let's say, well, I'll just go back to a view that I've been using. Let's say I'm curious to see the summary statistics for the data points that are in my new NEF screen view, sorry. So I'm going to select that. So with this, what we've just done is created a report that takes the data points for the 501 companies that were in the active notebook, which were again the results of my screen, and it creates median, average, fields, variables, as well as the standard deviation, and then the high and low range for the companies, for the data points that make up my new NEF view. So the dividend adjusted PEG ratio, which is the cornerstone of the NEF screen, which looks at the trailing PE divided by the forecasted earnings growth rate for the next 3 to 5 years, plus the dividend yield. It's a measure of valuation, but also takes into account then the dividend yield that a company may pay. So we can see that for the 364 companies that have a valid dividend adjusted PEG ratio for the companies that are in the S&P 500, the median or midpoint value is 1.8, whereas the average is 2.51. And we can see that the dividend adjusted PEG ratios for the 364 companies that make up this report range from 0.1 to 73.8. But again, you can see whatever data point you've specified, you get this information. Well, you know, why, people may ask, why would you use this report? Well, inevitably, you know, if you want to, you know, if you have a portfolio of companies and you want to just look, you know, I own this group of companies, you know, what's the average PE or what's the median PE for the companies that are in this my portfolio, things like that. So these are ways in which this statistical summary report may be of use to you. And then lastly, the last collection of reports I want to talk about are industry meeting reports. Since so many companies, a lot of the different data fields, you know, especially ratios, tend to be very industry specific. So let's say if you're looking at a particular industry, or if you're looking at a company and want to look at its current data and where it stands on a variety of data points relative to the companies that are in its sister industry. Well, the first thing you do then is create an industry median report. So let's say I'm going to actually look at this more the sector level. I'm going to run a statistical summary report for the companies that make up the technology sector. So now this is a predefined report. You're not able to specify the data fields that make up this individual report. Now, if you wanted to come up with a specific set of variables for a specific sector or industry, you could screen for that sector and industry using the screen editor and then create a statistical summary report where you could specify the view and therefore the data fields that report will capture. But in this case, the sector and industry meeting reports in Stock Investor Pro are predefined. So whether, doesn't matter if you're selecting a sector or a more narrow industry, whatever you're selecting, these are always the same data points that you're going to see on that report. But you can see then For example, and these are all median values. So as of Friday's close, the median PE for the companies that make up the technology sector, as designated by our data provider Refinitiv, the median PE for the technology sector is 23.7 as of Friday's close. The gross profit margin is 52.6. So you have a collection of information, but again, with this information, then you can pull up an individual company, pardon me, and compare an individual company to this more summary data for either a specific sector or industry. So now I'm going to touch on, pardon me, sort of been talking about the sort of the raw data that's available in Stock Investor Pro. And now I want to pivot and talk about the ways in which you can actually screen using Stock Investor Pro. And so the way in which a lot of different subscribers of Stock Investor Pro use the software is you can select from the predefined screens that are in Stock Investor Pro. Again, roughly 60 or so predefined screens. If you first load the program and have never added your own, then anything designated with an asterisk is a predefined screen. Probably over time, I've added screens that also have an asterisk. But this list, when you first open it, anything designated with an asterisk is one of the predefined screens. This helps you differentiate as you start creating and saving your own screens. So let's say, for example, I'm also a fan of David Dremin, big behavioral finance guy, a really deep value, but then also makes use of estimate revisions. So you can select any of the screens, either predefined or those that you might create. You can select those, and literally with the click of a button, you've narrowed the universe down from 7,000 plus companies down to this case, the 10 companies that pass the Dremin screen with estimate revisions as of Friday's close. You can also, now you can run a screen by selecting it from the drop-down menu, but you can also do the same thing from within the screen editor. So if you go to the tools menu and open up the screen editor, this will open up then the screen editor, which in a few moments I'll walk you through a very simple custom screen. But you also then have access from this drop-down menu within the screen editor, all of the screens that are built into Stock Investor Pro. So I'm actually going to select again, the Dremin with EPS estimate revisions. So not only when you load it, you can see all of the screening variables that make up all of the screens that are either predefined in the program or those that you might have created yourself. So this is not a black box system. You can see explicitly the different data fields that go into all of the predefined screens that come with the software. So, but here you can also run and apply a screen, but you have actually two options when you're doing this. You can see at the bottom of the screen editor, you have two buttons, how many and apply. So I'm going to start by clicking the how many button. So you can see as I ran, all of the different cells on the count on in the count end column for each of the individual rows were populated with numbers. Well, what do these numbers mean? This means that when you look at the percentage rank for PE, less than or equal to 40. So the first element of the Dremin with EPS estimate revisions looks for companies with a PE that ranks in the bottom 40% of the entire stock universe. And as of Friday's close, 1,367 companies out of the 7,033 companies that make up the database met this individual piece of criteria. And you have these numbers for all of the different lines. Why is this useful? Well, if you created your own screen and ran it, and you had no companies that passed, by looking at these individual lines, how many companies pass each of these individual filters, you get an idea of which of the filters are the most restrictive. And either you might want to consider dropping that or relaxing the criteria, the variable underlying that particular filter to have perhaps have more companies or some companies that all pass. So that is what you get with the how many button. Now, this is a bit of a legacy where it used to be back in the day, especially with 25 years ago, quite literally, you created a screen, and with processing power of what it was 25 years ago, it literally could have taken maybe about 5 or 10 minutes for it to run through all of the filters and then load the companies that passed. Whereas when you click how many, all it tells you is how many companies pass each of the individual filters, as well as then the 10 companies that pass the screen in its totality. But clicking how many does not load those companies that pass your screen into the active notebook. So actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to unload the screen that I had previously. So now I have no companies, no portfolios, no screens, and no view. And I clicked how many. So I see I have 10 here, but I've got my 7,033 companies that are selected. So my active notebook is still the full universe. If I wanted to load these 10 companies into the active notebook, I have to be sure that I click the apply button that then loads those 10 companies into the active notebook. So you can either run a screen by selecting it from the drop down or by applying it within the screen editor. Now, if you want to learn more about the predefined screens that come in Stock Investor Pro, you can go to the help system by going to help, contents and index, and this will bring up the Stock Investor Pro help system. And if you go to the predefined stock screening strategies, you can see the roughly 60 or so that are built into the software. And in this case, I'm going to select David Dremin, and I'm going to select Dremin with a twist, contrary stocks with upward earnings revisions. And there you have an article that describes that particular strategy. Because personally, I think you need to understand the strategy that you're following. So, you might know David Dremin, perhaps a little more obscure, but you're probably going to know, we have Buffetology screens, we have Templeton, we have a variety of quote unquote gurus, their strategies built into the software. So you might know the name, but you might not know necessarily the underlying screening strategy. But by looking up these individual articles that relate to these different strategies, you can learn about, why that individual chose those specific criteria to create their screen. So again, underlying and sort of reinforcing the educational mission of AAII. So again, this isn't a black box system. You can see exactly what the screening criteria are, as well as we give you the basis for all of these different screens that are built into the software. So touched on the predefined screens that are in Stock Investor Pro. But the other aspect, and perhaps of more use to a lot of you who are probably more do-it-yourselfers and really want to, roll up your sleeves, kick the tires, and build your own strategies, is the customization aspect of Stock Investor Pro. So I'm going to run you through just a very basic custom screen. So I'm going to go back to the Tools menu and open up the Screen Editor. You can also point out that there's this little filter icon on the toolbar. That too will launch the screen editor in Stock Investor Pro. So when you first open the screen editor, you have this blue field here in the field cell. So this is where you start building your screen. When you click in that, you get what we call is the field picker. These are all broken down by data category. So these are the data categories that are in Stock Investor Pro. And then within each of these data categories are probably literally dozens of individual data points. So let's say, for example, the first thing I want to do is I want to look at the PE ratio for a company. Well, where does the PE ratio live? Again, I've been using the software for 25 years, so I know, boom, immediately that the PE ratio is a multiple. But if you're new to the software, that probably is not intuitive to you. So how do you know what data category an individual data field is in? Well, if we come back to the help system, and if we go to the field definitions area, and you can look at them either alphabetically or by field definition by category. But again, since you don't know the data categories, you probably will want to do this alphabetically. And I want to do PE, so it begins with a P. So PE ratio. So we can see when you look at the field definition for all of the fields that are in Stock Investor Pro, one of the elements that you see here is data category. And here we can see that PE is in the multiples data category. So I'm going to come back to the screen editor. Got my field picker here. I'm going to go to multiples. And I'm screen to PE. So starting to look at PE. And so what I want to do? Well, I tend to be more of a value oriented. So I tend to look for companies that have lower PEs. So I'm going to select less than or equal to. And I am a fan of using more relative data. So, to say that, screening on absolute, so to say I'm looking at a PE that's less than 10 or something like that, that's very finite. And as the market rises and falls, that will, and if you keep a fixed variable, that's going to be, if the market becomes more richly valued, then setting an arbitrarily, quote unquote, low or high PE is going to have an impact. But let's say I'm interested, I want to look at industry. So I'm going to look for PEs that are less than or equal to the industry PE median. So two things in mind is, PEs, again, certain sectors, certain industries tend to have higher or lower valuations relative to other sectors or industries. But then also this industry PE will rise and fall with the market. So I'm going to start with looking for a PE less than or equal to the industry PE. But I'm actually going to add one additional element is you will also have this factor column. And what the factor column is whatever you enter in here, a number that is multiplied by the field that's in the compare to. So I'm going to put an example. So I want to find companies whose PE ratio is no more than half of the industry PE. So again, whatever number is in the factor is going to be multiplied by that industry PE. Little complicated, a little tricky to understand, but it's added elements. You could turn it around where, if you're looking for, let's say you are looking at sales growth, and let's say I want 5-year sales growth that's maybe twice that of a sector and industry, then you'd put 2 in here instead of 0.5 in this case. But in this case, again, I'm looking for PE that's less than or equal to half that of the industry median. And I know I'm getting a little long, so I'm going to just step things up a little bit. But now I'm going to say I'm also a fan. I want to look at projected earnings growth. And I know that this is in the earnings estimates data category. Again, you can look this information up within the help system. But EPS growth estimate. So this is the forecasted annualized earnings growth over the next 3 to 5 years, created by analysts. So let's say I want this to be greater than or equal to 10. So I'm looking for companies that over the next 3 to 5 years are forecasted to grow their earnings by at least 10% a year. And then lastly, because I also like to blend both momentum and value. So I'm going to add an element and look at stocks whose 4-week relative strength ranks in the top 25% of the database. So the percentage rank relative strength over the last 4 weeks is greater than or equal to 75. So it ranks in the top 25% of the universe. And so again, a very quick and simple screen, 3 data points. I'm going to click apply. And so as of the close on Friday, we have gone from 7,033 companies down to 7. And because I clicked the apply button, we can see the 7 companies that pass this particular screen. California Resources, Regeneron again, Pharmaceuticals, Dow Inc., Community Health, Norton LifeLock, Barbecue Holdings, and Amerisource Bergen. So actually some companies that I know and actually hold in the SSR portfolio that I also oversee. So this is how you can go about creating a very quick and easy screen. Then you can save that if you wanted to. So I'm going to just do. And now I can also select that whenever I want to from the drop-down menu that I created as well. So again, very simple and easy screen, but just shows you the ability to save your own screens. So this is, again, a very basic overview of Stock Investor Pro. And then the last thing that I just want to touch on are some of the user resources that help you. So I already gave you an overview a little bit of the help system. There are many useful pieces of information that are in the help system. I talked about the screening articles for all of the predefined screens that are in Stock Investor, as well as the field definitions. Also, just gives you a very basic rundown, creating and using portfolios, using and creating views. If you're really more advanced, creating your own data fields, not be able to time to touch on that today, but that is another element of Stock Investor Pro, is the ability to create your own custom fields that you can use for screening, as well as implement into views for viewing data, as well as creating the different types of statistical summary reports that are available in the program. But then lastly, I also want to close this. Probably just did something I didn't want to do, but I want to show you the Stock Investor Pro area of AAII.com and all of the different resources that are accessible there as well. My apologies if you hear the dog in the background. Our male person is here, and we have a very excitable little dog. So go to the Stock Investor Pro area of AAII.com. And you have a number of resources at your disposal. You have the Getting Started guide, but probably of most important are the different video tutorials that are accessible to you that literally will run you through, broad topics as far as creating your own screen, creating a portfolio, creating a view, as well as running through discussions of some of the different sets of data that are available in Stock Investor Pro. We also have FAQs and things of that nature. So a very robust set of user resources that are available to you as well. And with that, let me bring up one final thing, is the fact that we also are offering today a special offer to all of you who've taken the time to attend today's webinar. If you go to invest.aaii.com si pro flash sale. Today, and I think probably running for the next day or two, is we're offering a special $97 one-year subscription to Stock Investor Pro. This is roughly 68% off the regular price of our regular $299 subscription. So this is our thank you for those of you who took the time to attend today. But with that, and again, I went a little long, but I promised to take questions. So Jenna, do we have any questions?
Right there, yeah. So we have quite a few actually came in. So the first one, I think since a lot of people asked a similar question, was is SI Pro included in Platinum? And then also on a two-part question, how do members find SI Pro if they'd like to enroll?
Uh, Stock Investor Pro is not part of Platinum. Uh, we have our Platinum service revolves around our three premium model portfolios, the Stock Supercharge Report, dividend investing, and VMQ stocks, as well as our online analysis and analysis tool, A Plus Investor. So Stock Investor Pro is not included in the Platinum subscription. And again, to sign up for Stock Investor Pro, again, we have the is that slide still showing, Jenna, with the
Yes, it
special
is.
offer? Yeah, so it's the invest.aa.com/si pro flash sale. This will be the handout is available. So if you've downloaded the handout, you have access to this link or to subscribe if you want to.
Excellent. And another question we had was a little bit more about the platform itself. So we have a couple SI Pro members that actually loved the presentation. They said, hello to Wayne and thank you so much for taking the time. And then
Thank you for
also
attending.
part of that was they really like the Windows applications. If we go to an online forum, would those applications still be available to people who enjoy those?
That is one of the things that we'll have to deal with is striking that balance. The first my first thing is do no harm. So any online Platinum, if you're an A Plus subscriber, you know that we already have a simple custom stock screener that's available as part of the A Plus subscription, not anywhere near as robust or powerful as Stock Investor Pro. But as we move and start building out that custom stock screener, and eventually we'll probably pivot to more as a standalone, stock investor next generation is sort of the internal term we're using. Is I want to have at a minimum the same functionality that you get with Stock Investor Pro as far as the robust database screening functionality, everything like that, but make it much more user friendly, much more intuitive, and break away from being a Windows-based application. Inevitably, probably as we move forward, and for those, I'm assuming they're probably referring to maybe our historical database of installations. As Windows keeps advancing, it becomes harder and harder for us to maintain that historical collection of installations. So the ultimate goal for an online version of Stock Investor Pro will also be a back tester. Now, this is something that will be, is definitely many quarters away. But the goal, assuming we can find a data vendor that can provide us the data that doesn't break the bank, would be allowed to back test strategies, which would in effect remove the need to offer those historical installations we have on our website. That's probably why most people are using those historical installations. But again, very cognizant of the fact that we have a very dedicated and in some case long-term user base of Stock Investor Pro. So inevitably, as we start down this path, I definitely would want to be consulting with both current and long-term subscribers, what they like, what needs to be improved, things like that. So very cognizant that we don't want to, try to make something better, but then also in effect make things worse for subscribers.
Makes sense. And actually, you answered there's quite a few questions that asked about back testing. So I think that encapsulated their questions. But on the
I would just touch on that briefly.
yeah,
You can backtest with Stock Investor Pro using those historical installations. That's how we do it currently when we develop a new strategy. It is very time consuming, and depending on your system, it now is becoming more difficult because of as Windows gets enhanced. There is actually videos as part of this collection of videos on our website that walks you through how you can use those historical installations of Stock Investor for backtesting. But one of the things selfishly to make backtesting easier for us, but then also make it an attractive tool to current and prospective subscribers as well, would be to make the backtesting process much easier than it currently is.
that makes sense. And as far as updates for the SI Pro, how does SI Pro handle those updates? And then also things like acquisitions or mergers. How would SI Pro handle those items?
I'm assuming when you say updates, I'm assuming you're moving, I believe probably assuming data updates. Um, so currently right now, when you still install Stock Investor Pro, it puts a collection of shortcuts. Actually, I'm actually going to remove the slide. Screen. So here is my desktop, and you can see here are 4 shortcuts that are put on your, can you see my desktop, Jenna?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so there are 4 shortcuts that are put on your desktop when you install Stock Investor Pro. One of them is the updater. So every day, um, roughly around 4 or 5 a.m., we update the data through the previous close. So every day you can, after you've installed the program, you can run this updater and it will download and install the new data. One of the things we're actually been working on, I was hoping to have it ready for this presentation, but we are almost there, but not quite. We're actually working on a new updater. Some people run into some problems using the current updater because of some of the support files that are needed. And we've been working to create a new updater that our preliminary tests removes a lot of the obstacles that some people are running into. But yes, it's basically the matter of running a shortcut to download the data. If for whatever reason you are having problems using the automatic updates on the website, you can download the current version of Stock Investor Pro, and with that gives you the latest data as well. So you can always go to the website and download the program to get the current data, as well as access a historical archive of installations as well.
And let's see, we've got, okay, here's another question is, does the data point collection include price technical indicator values such as MACD and moving average indicators?
Stock Investor Pro is strictly fundamental data. So technical indicators like moving averages, MACD, stochastics, things like that, those are not in the program. If you are looking for that information, shameless plug and don't get anything out of it, but my favorite charting website is stockcharts.com. They have both a free and premium elements to it as well. But that's arguably one of the best technical analysis and charting websites that I use almost every day.
And talking about more specific data points, are debt stats for firms included in the database, such as total debt or current ratio?
Yes, current ratio, debt to equity, debt to capital, times interest earned. If you're looking to see the company's ability to, based on its earnings, to cover its debt obligations. So yes, there's a number of debt-related ratios in the program.
And what is the difference between the SI Pro field definition shareholder yield Y1 versus shareholder yield 1 year ago?
So 1 year is for the latest fiscal year end. 1 year ago. Okay, so shareholder yield. Okay, so shareholder yield looks at the change in, so it's using the buyback yield. So that's percentage change in shares outstanding. So Y1 is looking at the change from the end of the last fiscal year to the prior fiscal year. 1 year ago is looking at the trailing 12 months. So that's the difference there. Once a year, they will be the same when Q4 and the ending period for Q4 and the ending period for Y1 match. But that is the difference between the two fields.
And can the Stock Investor Pro compute correlations of company returns, and how is missing data handled?
No, it does not do correlation analysis. And I guess I'm not understanding if that person's still on, and perhaps either email me directly or if they want to clarify what they mean by missing data.
And
And again, that's Wayne at AAII.com if anyone has any questions.
let's see, was there let's see, one of our members said, nice presentation, Wayne. Is there a template or criteria for dividend stocks in the AAII newsletter?
So there is no, we use Stock Investor to run a screen that gives us the preliminary companies that we consider for DI, but that screen is not built into Stock Investor. But we do use Stock Investor to actually run the screens for the 4 different SSR portfolios, as well as the DI portfolio.
And so in the platform, can you rank 2 or more different metrics? Example, market cap over 100 billion, and also rank by return on equity?
Well, and it's nuanced, but there are ranking and screening are 2 very different things within the Stock Investor vernacular. Let me show my screen here again. So ranking means, let's say, I want to rank, because I've got my view up here. Let's say I want to rank these are the 7 companies that passed my simple screen that I created earlier. But let's say I want to rank it in descending order by its 52-week relative strength. Ranking is ordering. So and again, this does pose some difficulties for some people. So ranking, all that is changing the order. Screening is if you want to, I want to screen by companies whose 4-week relative strength ranks in the top 25% or something like that. As far as if you want to rank on 2 different elements, you can't. You can only rank it one at a time. So like with an Excel, you can choose multiple levels of ranking. You're not able to do that with Stock Investor Pro, which is another reason why some people export data into Excel. Now, if you want to screen on, let's say, relative strength and return on equity, you can certainly do that. You can look for stocks that have, a return on equity of 20 or higher and rank in the top 20% based on 4-week relative strength. So probably a long-winded explanation, perhaps overcomplicating, but sometimes people do get confused and use interchangeably when they, at least when it comes to Stock Investor, where it poses some difficulties ranking versus screening. So hopefully I answered that person's question.
And we actually, when I brought up the missing data, the member is still on the webinar, so he followed up with missing data referring to company data that does not go back an indicated amount of time. It is an issue for company return correlations, which Stock Investor Pro does not do.
Oh, okay. Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
And there was a couple more. Let me see. What about calculating FFO for REIT analysis?
We do have REITs. It is not, our database is standardized. So whether you're looking at a REIT, an industrial company, a bank, the data structure that we get from our data provider, basically, it might be, quote unquote revenue, but our data vendor, there's literally, depending on the type of company you're looking at, there's probably about 50 or 60, they call them COA or codes of account. there are literally about 50 or 60 COAs that go into revenue, depending on the type of company that you are. So we have to be looking at this wide swath of information. So the data is standardized that way. But as far as FFO and things like that, we don't have REIT specific data fields in that. It's to, any way that it's standardized based on other elements, but we don't have, specific data elements like FFO for REITs in the database.
And as far as like looking to the future for SI Pro, is there any possibility of adding Canadian equities in the future? For example, Nutrien and Gildan?
Out of curiosity, did that individual give the tickers for those two companies?
So the first one is NTR.
Let's see here. It's there.
Okay. And then the other one was GIL.
And that as well. Actually, probably about 3 or 4 months ago, we added about 400 Canadian stocks to the database. So yes, we were cognizant that we had some holes in our coverage there. We tended to be skewed more towards U.S.-based companies, but we made some tweaks to our filtering and spoke with our data vendor. So yeah, we offer now, I think it's around 350 to 400 Canadian based stocks that trade on U.S. exchanges.
And we just got a new question in actually. Screens on AAII Investor Pro versus Stock Investor Pro, are they using the same database with similar results?
I'm assuming
A
maybe they
plus, I would
mean
assume.
our web screens. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it is the same database. The caveat being is if you are familiar with our stock idea screens, oftentimes you'll see that, for example, I think our return on equity screen might limit it to maybe the top 30 companies based on the return on equity. Whereas we don't have those limiting screens. So if one of our web screens limits like the top 20 or 30 of based on some data field, you're not going to get that level of control. It's going to be more wide open within Stock Investor Pro. But yes, it is the same database that we're using to generate those web screens that we're using for Stock Investor Pro, the software.
And as far as we were talking about a little bit about cross-platform membership and everything. Can investors use the current special of 1 year for $97 to add the 1 year to my current existing subscription to A Plus Investor? So can other, if they already have an A Plus Investor or SSR, can they add SI Pro to their plan?
Well, if you've never used, if you're not a current subscriber to Stock Investor Pro, that $97 subscription is valid. If you are a current Stock Investor Pro subscriber, I'm not sure we offer that. You'd have to be sure. You'd have to double check with our member services department. But if you're a first-time subscriber to Stock Investor Pro, even if you're an A Plus subscriber, SSR, Platinum, whatever, you would be eligible for that $97 special offer.
And members can also, if you email members at AAII.com, our membership team is really helpful, and they'll get back to you as soon as they possibly can. I just want to see if there's anything else. I think we covered quite a lot. I guess some high level, just like differences between Stock Investor Pro versus A Plus Investor.
A Plus Investor really covers the full gambit of investing. So it's an investment idea discovery, analysis, and tracking tool. So you get, we have our basic custom stock screener, again, nowhere near the level of functionality and flexibility you get with Stock Investor Pro. But you have our A Plus stock grades, which are factor-based grades that you can use to identify stocks based on elements such as growth, value, momentum, estimate revisions, and quality. Those grades are not part of Stock Investor Pro, but you also have fund and ETF screening, as well as the ability to research individual funds and ETFs, which you don't get with Stock Investor Pro. A Plus also offers our My Portfolio tool. So it's an online portfolio tracking tool that you don't have access to with Stock Investor Pro. So Stock Investor Pro literally is just a fundamental stock screening, and not just, but Stock Investor Pro is the fundamental stock screening and research database program where A Plus Investor is really an all-in-one investment discovery, analysis, and tracking tool that's available online.
See if there's anything else. I think there was a follow-up just to further clarify for the viewer that was asking about the shareholder yield, Y1. He just wanted to clarify just to make sure that he understands correctly. Shareholder yield, Y1 looks at the shareholder yield for the most recent fiscal year, whereas the shareholder yield 1 year ago looks at the shareholder yield for the trailing 12 months. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. I think that's about it. Unless anybody has some last minute questions, I think we were able to cover most of them in here. And then like Wayne mentioned, if you have any outstanding ones that you'd rather just email him, you feel free to do so.
Again, that's Wayne at AAI.com. Easy to remember.
Excellent. Well, if we don't have any more questions for now, before we wrap up, I'd like to highlight, if you can see our screen, highlight a few upcoming webinars this week. So the main one we have right now is on Wednesday, February 9th, 2022. We have Weed Out the Week with VMQ, which is presented by Charles Roblet. And during that broadcast, Roblet will delve into how VMQ's tools and resources can benefit your current stock screening strategy, as well as how investors can use VMQ to weed out potentially risky stocks by adding a layer of quality. And to view and register for upcoming webinars, you can visit aaii.com/webinars. And yeah, thank you so much, Wayne. I wanted to offer a big thank you for taking the time to sit down with us and introduce us to some key Stock Investor Pro features.
Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And thank you, Jenna, for hosting this. I'm going to drop off, but I'm going to give you back presenter rights because I believe you have one other thing you'd like to talk about. But thank you very much, everyone. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to email me directly. Otherwise, have a wonderful afternoon and stay safe.
Excellent. Thank you. And real quick, I wanted to we want to thank our sponsor today, Discover Bank, with a quick video. And then I also want to just thank everyone for attending today's event. Links to resources discussed will be sent to your email address. And I do want to mention again that the presentation is recorded and a replay of the webinar will be available tomorrow on AAII's YouTube channel. And yeah, with that, we wish all of you viewing good health, good fortune, and a great afternoon. Thank you, and we'll end with a quick video. Thank you so much. And now for a message from our friends at Discover Bank. We know as individuals interested in building investor wealth, you never want your money to be idle. Even small dollar amounts for short amounts of time should be working for you. With that, we're pleased to share information from our partner Discover Bank on deposit accounts that keep your money moving. You can choose from several options to help you meet your short-term or long-term financial goals. The best part? All of the deposit accounts offer preferred member rates. Take a look. With Discover, you can earn over 5 times more interest than the national savings average with preferred member rates and pay no fees. That's no fees, period. Plus, no minimum balance is required. You can access your AAII member savings account with Discover Bank from your smartphone or tablet, so it's easy to keep your money moving in the right direction. Open an AAII online savings account to start saving for the future today. Visit aaii.discoverbank.com to learn more. And thanks again for attending our webinar, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Happy investing.